This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
This ought to be a lot of fun. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. Hey, we're broadcasting live 2 hours. Genesis Communications Network from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Genesis, the world's largest alternative radio network. And there's a link to all of your instructors on the website, USAPrepares.com. Converging threats are confronted daily. I'm Vincent Finelli. Alex is producing the broadcast in Minnesota, and today with us, back with us for 2 full hours, as he is every Thursday, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. You know him as the real Fox Mulder of the X-Files. He wrote the first 6 episodes of the X-Files, and I'll tell you what, he has started a renewed interest in the X-Files. He really has, because I can't tell you how many of our class tell me that they listen and watch and pay attention to Dr. Richard Allen Miller and watch the X-Files. Welcome back, Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
That's good morning. Tough act to follow. Man, goodness. Well, I don't know.
Rick.
I'm just, it makes me blush.
Hey, Rick, I want to tell you, seriously, I get emails and looking forward to Dr. They call you Ram in these emails. Looking forward to Ram coming back, and where's Ram? And Ram's my favorite, and even though I don't know exactly everything he's saying, and Rick, that's the way. That's the way it was when I first met you on the telephone. You said to me that if you're getting half of what I'm saying, you're doing really well. And I said, I'm running as fast as I can, and I'm getting about half of it. And the more contact time we have with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, the clearer it is as to what he is saying. It really is true. So I know the class is really delighted to have you back. Rick, you came back from you were on a 6,000-mile round trip from the West Coast to the East Coast and back. Tell us, what were you up to?
We went back. They flew me back to do several workshops in Chattanooga and Atlanta. And then I walked some farms with several individual farmers, and then also got a chance to meet a bunch of children and talk to them about new concepts in agriculture. It was really interesting. I like working with children. There's a need for educational reform, and I don't think any of us are going to change enough to save this planet or ourselves, and it's going to be with the children, starting with their food and what food choices they decide to make. And we need to get them young enough that they get it. And once that's happened, maybe there will be some paradigms changes in agriculture and our relationship to our environment. I don't know.
Rick,
I know that's a heavy thing. I talk about indigenous, the concept of survival, the way basic tribes like Aborigines or American Indians relate to their environment. It was Chief Sealth of Seattle that once said, how can man own the land he lives on? How can he own the air he breathes? We're just here for a moment. We're like caretakers. And so the idea of ownership of land, the idea of selling air, that's nuts. And yet, that is where we find ourselves today. And as a result, Of course, nothing is really real because of these kinds of value systems. And what we find is greed and corporations having the same rights as an individual, where they are attempting to control our every moment's existence, control fantasies. I don't have answers, but what I have seen is that the children are receptive and willing and wanting to make these changes, even though their parents may, including myself, are ill in terms of what we think are good foods and why we would choose to eat one thing over another. It's we got to start somewhere, and so I figured it would be with the children that were 4 years old, ones that had not yet been, I don't know, culturally programmed,
Rick, you mentioned the ownership of the land and the ownership of the air. I was reading an article months ago, and it was about a car dealership in Salt Lake City, Utah. And the owner of the dealership was contacted by the city and was threatened with fines because what he had done was he diverted the water that landed on the roof of his dealership building into a cistern underground on his property in his parking lot, where he used that water to wash the cars in his on his parking lot at the dealership. Makes perfect sense to me, recycling the water instead of letting it run off and pulling water out of the ground to wash cars, or using the city water, the potable water, if you will, for washing cars. He used the water from his collection from his roof. Well, the city was all over him and told him that it was not his water. It was their water, and he needed water shares in order to use that water, and he could buy them from the city. I called him up, and I said, hey, why don't we talk about this? This absolutely makes me crazy. And he said, no, it's okay, it's okay. And I said, what do you mean it's okay? And he said, well, look, we worked it out. And I said, what did you work out? He said, well, the city is going to allow me to use their water that I collect in my cistern from my roof. And I said, their water? It's their water? Isn't it your property? He said, yeah. Don't you pay taxes for it? Yeah. Didn't you buy it? Yeah. So it's their water? Well, they're going to let me use it. And I said, well, why don't we go on the radio and expose them? And he goes, no, it's okay. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. He backed down. This guy backed down. And he's going to agree to use the city's water that lands on his roof that he collects to wash his cars. I don't know why he didn't fight it.
Yeah, I know. I got it. In Medford, Oregon, here, there was an individual that collected water off his roof to irrigate his garden. And they put him in jail. He's in jail right now. The statement is, what falls from the Lord belongs to the state of Oregon. The city of Medford is somehow connected to the state of Oregon, and the state of Oregon is connected to the United States, and I don't think it goes beyond North America. But, the whole idea of putting cement down on the ground to cause water to flow and travel differently for what we call riparian water rights, that kind of thing. The U.S. Forest Service has a law that's called riparian water rights, and the way it's a moratorium or a forbidden zone where you can't do anything 200 feet from a river. Now, how they arrived at that arbitrary length of measurement was 2 Douglas fir trees dropped one to the next. That's in the blue pages. It actually says that it was the lengths of 2 Douglas fir trees. The whole concept of rights and so on has to do in that regard with logging and taking from the soil something that still belongs there. A forest is not a tree plantation. And when you log a forest down, clear cut is the way they call it out here, to put a new plantation in, That was shown with spotted owl movie that Paul Newman made. I mean, he showed the difference between a forest and a plantation. They're absolutely, completely different. And really, our topsoils come from forests, some grasslands, but over a much, much longer period of time. Most forests, what they're about is creating topsoil. It's just the way people look at things monetarily. That's what I think is like our food choices. That's going to be another paradigm that's going to need to be revisioned.
Well, Rick,
it's silent. I know. It's I don't know what to think about it all. I'm at wit's end. I'm trying to do my part toward the educational reform and with food choices. I'm going to do that with children. I've got a small group of children in Chattanooga growing wildflowers for a larger group of homeless in Chattanooga now, and it's with non-GMO products. It's wildflower salads. They're paying it forward, and it's almost as if the children are becoming our caretakers and teaching us to remember what we had forgotten.
Rick, how old are these children that you're working with?
4 years old, 5. They're young, very young. And then they have a mentoring project where rather the children these kinds of concepts, what we do is have master gardeners acting as facilitators. That would be where they'll put the garden in and the little kids learn how to do it, and now the ones that are in third grade will mentor the first graders in showing them what they've learned and what they don't want to do and why. It turns out that kind of educational process is superior to our current forms of instruction where we leave no child behind. Some children learn differently than others, and they all learn from their elders in terms of a hierarchy of respect. And if you start with grade school kids teaching each other. You know, when a kid is bad in first grade, what they normally do when they send the child to the principal's office is that they have a third grader who escort that first grader to the office. That's what we're talking about, mentorship.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We're going to talk more about food production and children and how they are our best hope. We'll be right back. It's great to be back with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and I know our class is glad to hear you, Rick. Rick, you were talking about 4-year-olds and children. It seems to me that children are, and I hate to use this word because the president uses it, and he has corrupted the word hope. But children are, in the old definition, our best hope and our best choice and our best plan to pull out of this. Because if you're talking about 4-year-olds, Rick, they haven't lived long enough to be corrupted and programmed by the system to learn how to lie and cheat and steal and misrepresent and abuse everything around them.
Yeah, that's part of it. The maturing process of becoming 7 years old from being 4, where you have almost complete innocence. What I'm finding in the innocence that I'm encountering with these kids is that once you give them permission to allow them to do something, they just, they're all over it. It's just wonderful to see that energetic enthusiasm. That's the word I'd use. Something from Aleister Crowley, that idea of being inflamed. That's what a child is. And it is approaching the concepts we find with indigenous, where their relationship is one of joy. The internal landscape is to look at the land differently than as a resource and look at it as something that you have to coexist with. And then how do you do it in a manner that it allows both of you to survive? Cooperation, that's a good word. That's what I think the human genome is in our genes. That element is what the Bible would have suggested makes us special or God's favored, was that we have in our genes the ability to assimilate and cooperate. The cooperation element is this idea that we have Homo neanderthal in our Homo sapiens sapien genetics, and that we are able to take any number of different kinds of gene structures and somehow assimilate them into becoming human. And the child is at the very best previously hasn't been programmed and is completely receptive to the universe. And it's that place of consciousness that allows us to become great. That is really why I wouldn't use the word hope either, by the way, because hope, metaphorically, it comes out of Greek mythology as the last evil in Pandora's box. It was supposedly a gift from the gods, and really, hope would presume that something is going to divinely intervene, and really, it's going to be a lot of hard work, not a gift. It's something we have to go out and earn. That's why I make a distinction between rights and responsibility and this concept of indigenous relationships to your environment.
Rick, I was on the air with Dr. Norm Shealy yesterday, and he interrupted, or he took a couple hours off to be on the air on Genesis from his Native American training series that he and Chief Cloudpiler of the Nemenhah Congregation of Tribes were holding. They're training people on how to become a Native American medicine man and woman, and that was a week-long event. And so that's what they were working on yesterday, and they feel exactly that way. One of the things that they say early in the discussion of their philosophy is first, do no harm, and they mean it. Do no harm. Don't wreck it, whatever it is. Don't wreck it, and whether it be health or the environment. And if we could just learn from the Native Americans. Wow, wouldn't that be something? Because if you look at what our government does, they wreck with reckless abandon. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, I'm Vincent Finelli. We'll be right back. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Hey, Rick, did you know that countries that have, the Subway, submarine sandwich stores, countries that have more of them have more fat people than countries that don't have them?
I know that our diet choices are turning us into Walmart shoppers. I mean, that's what I see happening. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying is, and I think, Rick, if you put the pieces together, those countries that have more disposable funds will go to places like Subway. And I think it's not just Subway that makes people overweight. I think it's the fact that we have a higher standard of living, and we do less work, and we're less energetic, and we drink more fluoride, and you put all that together, and there you have it. You become
your human
more
body
obese.
is having difficulty coping with it, and next thing you know, you've got cancer. That's right. The human body is probably one of the finest machines ever built. It has cold fusion. Everything you eat becomes you until at some point it can no longer cope. And that's when it breaks down. And that is, in my opinion, having to do with our food choices. Right now, I'm losing weight by being mindful of how many calories I eat. I'm trying to keep it at 1,200 calories a day. That seems very low. Most people's diets are at least 3,000 to 4,000 calories every day. There is no way you can lose weight eating like that, no matter how active you are. That's what our primary problem is. It's a conglomerate of lifestyles and choices. And really, it's time for a lifestyle change, to rethink why we do what we do, including disposable incomes.
Rick, when you say 12,000 calories, can you describe what that means?
Yeah, I have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in my refrigerator, top shelf, middle shelf, and bottom shelf. And I get to eat one thing from each of those shelves each day. And I start with oatmeal and fruit in the morning. At lunch, I have, they say to eat like a king. In your breakfast, eat like a prince. At lunch, and eat like a pauper at dinner. And that's probably a good place to start, where you start your day and your needs from the energy that you put into the fuel at that moment. If you're working from last night, that's going to be sitting there and turning into fat. And so if you are more mindful of what you eat and when, predicated on your body's needs, now you're in better tune with how the body works as, let's say, a wood-burning coal heater or something. You put coal in, and they'll get to work out. And so if you're doing that late at night, how does that work?
So, Rick, you have oatmeal and fruit for breakfast. That's exactly what I have, except I have a cup of coffee in one of these black USA Prepares.com GCN coffee mugs. I have that. And so let's talk about what would be a good lunch.
Lunch is a good place to work is with some blood sugar, maybe some fruit and fruit salad, or some greens and a low amount of carbs, let's say with vegetables. Steam some vegetables with rice, something like that. I eat my protein usually at noon. So yesterday morning I had barbecued up some chicken thighs on sale. And so what I did is I put a thigh between a sandwich and had that as my lunch. It was a piece of chicken, no condiments on it, and toasted bread. And the bread I'm using now, I'm very careful about that. Even now I'm starting to think about how to eliminate grains from my diet. I think in this new article I wrote on mind control, they're attacking us with our gut. And that is literally what's happening. And so that's my message right now, is that we are no longer what we eat, but whom we feed. And our food choices with sugars and things like that will determine which bacteria dominate in your gut and on your body. With rosacea and all the rest of these skin things that we have, that's actually a reflection of our diets.
Rick, eliminating grains is tough.
Oh, I know.
It's
that's
really
the whole part of it. Good luck finding any kinds of grains out there that might have not been contaminated with GMO. I look for amaranth. I do rice probably more than I will wheat or oats. But, like oatmeal, there's oats, there it is, and soybean and some of the other things like that now it's a nightmare. What they're doing with transgenic soybean is using that as a delivery system for inoculating our children with viruses, the virus protection or whatever like that. Basically what I see is they're putting these chemicals that are actually growing are pharmaceuticals in sunflower seeds. And so the big sunflowers that are growing, what they're doing that for is to get, let's say, amoxicillin out of the plant. And the bottom line is, if that gets into our food chain, which it is, Now it's our ability to respond to that is minimalized, and I'm seeing this happening in everything. They passed laws in Europe, Germany, where it was illegal to grow any kind of GMO corn. So what happened next? It escaped, and now it's part of their food chain, even though they passed a law against it. So, it's so invasive. The food pyramid itself is not even about nutrition. And they are, most Americans, especially in Missouri, eat bread in every meal.
Yes.
And that's right out of the gate. That is wrong. And there's so many articles on the internet now, from the Health Ranger on down, running it out, chapter and verse. There it is. And so wheat, the staff of life, is now a primary weapon used by military. How's that one feel? And, they're attacking specific bacteria in your gut. I just wrote an article that has identified T. gondii, a bacteria. I call it a little mind bender. It will actually change your personality. And what they're doing now is altering a gene in wheat to actually activate that normally inert bacterial parasite. And everybody's got it. Pretty much, if you've been around cats, you've got it. And it's inert until you eat certain kinds of foods, which then activate it and allow it to take over. And so, of course, it would make sense. That would be the first application of something like that would be military.
Rick, I asked Dr. Shealy in person and on the air about the difference between those who live in the country and those who live in the city. And could he spot someone who lives in the country versus someone who lives in the city at, let's say, 35 years of age or older, meaning from a distance? What I was getting at is, I had a doctor who was in his 80s when I lived in Virginia, and I could swear that this doctor, whose office was down at the end of his... He owned the building, so it wasn't as if he was part of someone else's practice or a hospital practice. He had his own practice. And I believe that as I walked down the hallway, the 30 feet or whatever it might have been, from the waiting room to his office, he looked at me and he'd look at all his patients, and he could see the general health by their gait, their walk, their posture, their color, their whether they looked down, up, whether they were alert. I believe he could do that and get a general sense of health. And I asked Dr. Shealy if he could tell from a distance if a person was a city dweller or a country dweller, if you will. And the answer is yes. In a lot of cases, it is yes, because of the complexion, color, and body mass, if you will. So what I'm thinking about, Rick, is how this relates to laziness, which I see it's pervasive. The lack of energy, the lack of enthusiasm, the lack of drive, the lack of starting a project, the lack of initiation. It's everywhere. And we're falling down because of it, at least in my opinion. I think we are. And I wonder, as I listen to you talk about food and wheat and soy and Monsanto, and then I add to that what I'm thinking about in the back of my mind with fluoride. These are all weapons of our own self-destruction.
Well, there's a lot of disinformation out there. That's true. The public isn't given full disclosure. For example, with wheat, while all of us know now a little bit about gluten and gluten intolerance, and so now the big term is gluten-free. I remember a time when it was illegal to put all natural. That means that there wasn't anything in that mix that was unnatural, like dyes or modified GMO. But that's all changed as each century does, and where we're at today is that the labels that are on there to protect the public are meaningless in many, many ways. And there are ways to dodge, or what they call lying by omission. And when you talk about wheat and galadin, there's another neurotransmitter called galatomorphin. Now, that is a morphine-like chemical in wheat that when you eat wheat, it makes you feel satisfied, and you want more because you have that feeling of satisfaction. That's why you like to eat pastries with lots of sugar. It is releasing galatomorphin, which goes across the blood-brain barrier and lets you feel like you're satisfied and you want more.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller, richardallenmiller.com, Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. We're talking about what's happening to us, the system, what it's doing to us, the lies, the deception. I'm Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. Rick, I'd like to share something with you. When I was learning about business formally in school, I was taught that taxation is used to shape behavior. So, for example, if the government decided that they didn't want us to do something, they would tax it. So, or if they did want us to do something, they would give us incentives. So, for example, back in the Jimmy Carter years, if you wanted to install solar power or solar electrical generation devices or energy saving devices, you could save money on your taxes through taxing policies. And if the government wanted to extinguish certain behaviors, they would tax them. Well, the IRS has now become an enforcement arm of the government, a threatening arm of the government, a pressuring arm of the government. And there's a gentleman by the name of Larry Connors. He is a personality on KMOV in St. Louis, Missouri. And he interviewed the president on air, and he asked him some tough questions. He asked him about Obamacare, and he asked him about, hey, what's this about, and I'm paraphrasing, what's this about, you going on vacation, you spending all this money while the country's going down the drain. Well, all the smiles that the White House staffers had at the beginning of the interview all went to, the smiles went away. And the next thing that this guy knows is he is the target of IRS assistance. So they're coming down on him. The IRS is coming down on him. And so I called his office yesterday day before to see if I could get an interview with him and put him on the air with me and talk about it. And I got a message back. He's not doing interviews. They silenced him. So we now have not only misinformation, but anyone who's trying to get information out is being muzzled by the powers that be and by the government. Rick, are you hearing other stories like this, or?
Oh yeah. Even myself, in some minor ways, they're called distractions, but in fact, they're weapons of destruction. They take the energy out of us to want to continue doing some sort of, in the great book of magic, it was called The Spell of Invisibility, Low Profile. And that is the problem with media and the concept of an idea being a virus. It is, ideas, concepts can be seen as a type of viral infection, and it's something, they even say that now on the internet, it's gone viral. That has to do with memes and the concept of the way we classify our ideas. There's a lot of very interesting people doing work in that area too, by the way. It's called cybernetic anthropology. It's a way of being and the way you set up a city and with the slums over here and the shopping center there, sets up a group consciousness that makes a uniqueness of the difference between, let's say, New York City and Chicago. They're quite different, and you get a different feel. And that's part of what I'm trying to discuss about being indigenous and the way we respond and relate to our environment. The way we set it up determines how that environment's going to respond back. And the government is doing the same thing. They are setting up types of memes or concepts, tax incentives so that you keep it as farmland as opposed to residential, that kind of thing. Why? Well, type of control, larger bodies of people.
Yeah, larger bodies of people put us all together, round us up, and we're all in one location so they can control us. Dr. Richard Alan Miller's with us. We're going to come back on the other side of this top of the hour news and commercial break. And I'm going to play for you a little clip when we get back, and I'll show you what we are doing. And I have a challenge to Missouri lawmakers, and actually I'd like it to be a challenge to all lawmakers, and I'd like to share it with everyone you know. We'll be right back. I'll tell you what it is. Dr. Richard Alan Miller's with us, and we've been talking about the system. We've been talking about what the system is doing to us. We've been talking about food, and I've got a package of LEDs here. That's what that sound is. And I'll tell you a little bit more about these LEDs in just a minute. Had a meetup last Monday, and I was talking about the project that I'm working on here at the farmhouse, and how it involves alternative lighting. But I'd like to share with you a short clip. Let me get set for this. Here's a little clip, and I'll tell you a little bit about what this means in just a second.
Okay, Vincent, I understand that all of us are scheduled to be off campus for a field trip. Good job. I like field trips. Since you made the arrangements, please instruct our class where and when to meet for the field trip.
Okay, so...
That's good, man.
We're going on a field trip, Rick.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we are. And, Rick, as I've said for the last, maybe year and a half, that I think that, I said it privately, but I'll say it publicly now, that USAPrepares.com, the Get Prepared Expo, seems to me like the barbecue before the Continental Congress. Whole bunch of people that
That's a metaphor.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to get me in a lot of trouble. I know they're coming to get me. But Rick, seriously, a lot of us that are involved with USAPrepares.com, not a lot of us, all of us, are disappointed with the direction that our country is going. We are furious that our liberties and freedoms are being stolen by the second that we are being taxed out of existence, that businesses are going belly up because they can't cope with the regulation and the invasive government minions that come to help them, and it's never ending. And then the competition that's being enhanced from offshore, like China and Mexico and these third world countries. Well, yesterday I was thinking about, actually I lost my temper on the air yesterday afternoon on KWTO. I mean, I literally lost my temper, and I said, I was wondering kind of where this line in the sand is going to be, and when is it going to happen that somebody is going to say, that's it. Well, it happened yesterday afternoon on KWTO. I said, that's it. And I was furious because our records were given to Homeland Security. My information, as well as 185,000 others here in Missouri, our CCW information was given to the federal government with the assistance of our Governor Jay Nixon and the Department of Revenue. And the Department of Revenue, the head, resigns. Okay, I'm sure they gave him everything he needed, to make his life comfortable after he sold us out. And we're being sold out by the second. The IRS is selling us out. And we have the trifecta of corruption, which would be the IRS pressuring people, investigating people. We have the Department of Justice investigating, and we have the AP wire investigations. It's nonstop. And then we have Benghazi. Okay, we have the trifecta of corruption and cover-ups and conspiracy. Fact. People. I can't believe it. There's some people who are so naive as they're saying there's no such thing as conspiracy theory. It's here. It's here. It's all around us, and it has been. And those people who are saying there's no such thing are purveyors of bad information. They are part of the problem. Anyway, so I said, here, there's this, okay, the line's been crossed. It has been crossed. So what we're doing is we're going on a field trip. USAprepares.com is going on a field trip to City Hall in Springfield, Missouri. And there are about 110 of us that go to these meetups. And I'm anxious to see how many of us actually show up for our meetup at City Hall in Springfield. And here is our plan. And I'm even going to tell these guys, I'm even going to tell City Council and the city manager of Springfield, Missouri, exactly what our plan is. And it's called MBWA. Manage by walking around. And that's a General Electric management technique. And what these managers would do back in the 1980s is they would walk around with a clipboard and a pencil, and they would just look around. So the big boss would come down from upstairs, and people would go, "Uh-oh, he's here. He's here." And they'd see him and they'd say, "Oh, man, this is not good news, because that guy never comes down here. He's like way up the ladder. So he never comes down here to be with us. Something's up." And then he would just, walk around, not say anything, not smile. And smiling's not allowed. And he would just look down his clipboard. He'd look at somebody. He'd look down his clipboard. He'd look at somebody, look down his clipboard, and then he'd start writing. Then he'd walk around. He'd look at somebody else and he'd start writing. And he's writing his grocery list. His wife said, "Okay, don't forget the bananas, don't forget the lettuce for salad, and so forth." And he'd write these things down. But the people that he looked at thought, "Oh my gosh, he knows what I've done wrong. I'm going to get fired. He knows what I did today, yesterday, the week before, last month, this year." And that's a technique. And that is the technique that we're going to use on Monday at 6:30 when we all show up at City Council's meeting in Springfield, Missouri.
Don't forget, what you're doing is what's called transactional analysis. That means that if you speak to someone like they're a child, they will behave like a child in their response. Mm-hmm. And so there might be a type of revisioning rather than trying to be adversarial. I'm guessing that City Council are not, in their mind, being bad. They're trying to do the right thing. It comes down to having different values of what's important. And that part, it varies from one location to another, and that's why people don't want to live certain areas, because this is what's happening there. That with that concept, you find fellowship with belief systems and try to instigate change. But really, in order to actually have change in the world, you can't actually go out and change the world. What you can do is change yourself, and so the world will change with you. And some of this, it's simple, because it has to do with what you choose to see and what you choose to ignore. And everybody's different. And what you're trying to do is highlight things that are important to notice, like food. What would happen in Springfield if the grid went down. And we have today, right now, 4 massive coronal discharges from the sun that are going to affect our weather. They are going to affect our weather. Whether or not they affect the delivery of food or not, that's a big question. But if that happens, there's only, 2.5 days worth of food in Chattanooga? I mean, in Lebanon or Springfield? And what Chattanooga did was decide that they have these restaurants that are 4-story. They're old houses. They're like big old houses. They converted them into restaurants, and they have a greenhouse right next to the restaurant. Now, that greenhouse has no way of producing the amount of volume of food going through that restaurant. However, it symbolizes their networking of 12 other major gardens in Chattanooga, where now in restaurants, 40% of the food that's used is grown right there locally. And that would be a good place to start with City Hall, where they encouraged, community gardens in the local downtown areas of Springfield, so that if food were to become an if problem, and the diet choices that we talked about last hour, that part that would be a place that I'll bet you could find common ground. And if you find common ground, at some point, those bureaucrats are going to see what you see and feel what you feel. And while they might be hands tied because of regulations and rules, that's why we have the vote.
And Rick, that's what we're going to do.
Each area is different. They're going to come at it differently. But rather than be adversarial, those guys at City Hall are not crooks. They might be up in Chicago, and they might be, but you should approach it as they really don't know what to do and are trying to do the right thing, predicated on what their constituency voters have chosen. The reason they want to support this person over someone else. And really, what I've found is that everybody pretty much wants to do the right, maybe not Rumsfeld, but you get what I'm trying to, Rumsfeld just opened a library, I can't believe it, some catacombs. And did you hear that Google has just purchased a quantum computation algorithm computer, a supercomputer? What's that about?
Well, Rick here.
Gmail.com. Give me a break, man. What do you think's going on?
Rick, the plan with going to City Hall is we have been talking with them for over a year about getting fluoride out of the water. They are stonewalling us.
Use fluoride right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, and what's happening is, as a matter of fact, they're just poisoning us into being dumb, stupid, fat, lazy, lethargic. And so what we're going to do is we're going to let them know that we are watching them, and we are going to hold them accountable for poisoning us, and we're going to throw them out. We're going to throw them out. So we've tried being nice. We have really tried. It's not working. So we are going to gang up on them the same way that they gang up on us when they set up these gauntlets with the police and they make us go through license, registration, ID cards. We're going to show them who's boss. Class, Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Richard Allen Miller. And you can go to his website, richardalanmiller.com. Rick, I have in my hands a strip of LEDs, light-emitting diodes, and they are 5 meters in length. And there are about, in this particular one I'm looking at, between 120, they come in different densities, 120 to 150 to 300 LEDs over a 5 meter length. And they operate on 12 volts. This particular one I'm looking at is 3 amps at 12 volts. So that's 36 watts. And what I'm going to do, Rick, is install these on wooden strips, painted. The wooden strips will be painted to match the trim in our house, and I'm going to put it in the great room, the kitchen, all the rooms, and I'll have 12-volt lighting so that, should there be a grid down situation, we'll have LED lighting everywhere, very low power, and I can light the entire house. If I turn on every single room in the house, I'll be able to light it with 30 amps at 12 volts or 360 watts. Of course, I wouldn't be doing that in a grid down situation, and I figured out that I could probably power lighting, if I used it judiciously, in the house for almost 1 month on a 12-volt automotive car or truck battery. So I wanted to share that with you, and here's what happened. I showed this. I enrolled part of a role at the meetup, and I showed the group at the meetup what I was doing, and they were so interested in this very inexpensive technology. One of these rolls is about it's less than $10 for 16.
How do you recharge your power, your battery?
I have, okay. Well, you know that our house, you've been to the farmhouse, and it's a stone farmhouse, and it's set long ways north and south. So the front faces the west. So we have a south side where the garage is, and facing south, I've got 2 solar panels, and I'm going to be able to recharge deep cycle batteries with these solar panels. And my concern, you can't do everything with solar. I have a wind turbine. I have a wind turbine that I'm going to install in the next couple of weeks, and it's a small wind turbine. It's less than a kilowatt, and I have these solar panels. And Mrs. Finelli is hot on me to buy battery banks. So I'm going to get some deep cycle batteries, some more of them. We have about 4 of them right now, but that's not enough. And so we're going to charge the batteries with solar and wind, and we will literally be able to light our house off the grid, and that's a start. Now, we have, and I want to share this because you can't, it's almost unaffordable for most of us working types to cook and heat our hot water with electricity. It makes no sense. So what we're doing is, we've had, since we built this farmhouse 7 or 8 years ago, we've had propane for cooking, and our hot water, although we have electric hot water heaters, I have an 80-gallon hot water heater and a 50, but those are, the 80-gallon unit is heated with that outdoor wood furnace. So basically, we're heating our domestic hot water with wood. And Rick, our electric bill is around $84 a month if we're not using air conditioning, and that includes running refrigeration, the freezers. We have 2 freezers, refrigerator, dishwasher, and all the modern conveniences that many of us enjoy. So the plan is to use these LED strips backed on 1x2, let's say, or 1x1 wood, and light the entire house with them. So
the idea of capacitors and storage systems like a battery is really interesting and valid. Of course, the Ark of the Covenant probably was a big battery. And when Moses and his sister looked in it, they were both scarred, like battery acid or something like that. The thing I am concerned about is the toxicity of the elements within a battery in terms of what they do to the soil.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that when we come back, and we'll also talk about a little bit more about this. And I'll tell you what happened when I showed this to the group. Unbelievable reaction. I was actually shocked. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and I'm a little distracted here. I'm playing with these LED strips. So, Rick, here's what we've got. The LEDs, and this is a little project that I'm working on at the Finelli farm. The idea is I don't expect the grid to be 100% reliable. You talked about the CMEs, the coronal mass ejections right now that are happening from the sun. And, it could take out the grid. So for an investment of about probably a little less than $200, between $150 and $200, if I had a 12-volt source of power, I could light up my whole house. Now, I have the wire to connect all this throughout the house, all over, and frankly, the wire that you need is not very heavy. It really is, and we're only talking to wire the whole house. I'm talking about 360 watts to wire every room. So you can use 18 gauge speaker wire because this is 12 volt LEDs, but they're 3/8 of an inch wide. Think of it like ribbon with bumps on it. And it's really cool.
Be like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's self-adhesive on the back. It's got a 3M adhesive strip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some actually I've got them 1x3s. I'm going to rip them down the middle. So I'm going to get 1x3 1.5s, and I'm going to sand them and paint them with a semi-gloss so that I can attach the sticky 3M backing of the adhesive backing of these LEDs to these boards, and I'm going to screw them to the ceiling because we have a textured ceiling in a lot of our ceilings, and that will allow the LEDs to run cool and last the rated 50,000 hours life expectancy of these LEDs, and you can chain them together in series. So I'm going to have these 8-foot boards, and the LEDs are about 16 feet long per spool, and they're less than $10 a spool. So I did a quick calculation. I only need for the entire kitchen, and it's a long kitchen. It's a fairly large kitchen, and we spent a lot of time there. So the kitchen's almost 30 feet long by about 16. So I'm going to have 4.5 spools. So 4.5, roughly $45 for permanent lighting. It'll last lifetimes, 50,000 hours expected life at 12 volts. So all I have to do is, if there's a power failure, I'm just going to take a couple alligator clips, if you will, and hook it up to a car battery, and we're good to go. So it can be done as simple.
That's interesting, yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I've never. I knew that technology was moving in that direction, but to have it be in this state right now, that's very cool.
Well, here's what happened, Rick. It's unbelievable. So we had this seminar, the meetup last Monday, and Jeffrey Maddox was there, and he was talking about bees. He's our beekeeping instructor. He was at the expo. Yeah. He's going to be at the next expo with you and the rest of the instructors. So anyway, I enrolled part of one of these strips, hooked it up to a little wall ward, a 12-volt wall transformer, a little tiny one, and it powered up. And he's like, "Wow, that's really, really neat." So I said, "Look, I'm not in the business of selling these, and I don't want to sell these." And here's, I explained the cost, and it was literally less than $10 per. It actually was more like $6 and change. Less than $7 is what it costs per spool. And I said, if any of you want them, I'll be glad to order them in bulk and sell them at my cost, which is whatever I pay for them. And I said, I think they're going to be about $6.85 a piece. So for 16 feet. Well, we passed around a sheet, Rick. I've got the sheet right here. This meetup group ordered a half a mile. A half a mile of LED strips. So I'm trying to buy them, and the seller's going like, he sends me emails like, "What are you doing?"
Lighting a large cavern. Yeah.
So I guess the point is there is a lot of interest in cost-effective solutions to what some of us may see as serious potential problems, like the grid going down. Rick, you mentioned. So what else, class? Let me just say this. I'm going to take some pictures of the project, and I'll take so you can see exactly how this goes. But bear in mind, I am a one-man band, so I'm a farmer, and I do a little bit of radio.
Everything's going on, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things going on, and we're getting ready for the next expo, which is July 19, 20, and 21 at the Cowan Civic Center in Lebanon. So if you're thinking about participating, that's the date. So, Rick, can we talk about the coronal mass ejections? What can this mean to us here on planet Earth?
Well, if there's different kinds, and they're M-class X-band. They have a whole bunch of different radiation pattern signatures. If it's in an X-band, or, it could act like an electronic spike, ELF spike, where it'll actually fry your ignition system in an automobile, kind of like that tower did, where it was a Kohl's parking lot that we were talking about earlier.
Let me share that for those that haven't heard that. There's a parking lot in Springfield, Missouri. And there was this phenomenon. People would drive in with their new automobiles, Chryslers and General Motors and such, and they'd pull into the parking lot, they'd get out, they'd lock their car, they'd go shopping, and they'd come back to their car and they'd hit their keyless unlock button, and they couldn't get in the car. And so if they had their key, a physical key to put in the tumbler and turn the key, they could unlock the car, but they'd hit the start button, the push button start, the electronic start, and the car wouldn't start. So it was like there was a disconnect between the start button and the starter of the engine, and there was a disconnect between the keyless remote and the automobile or the truck. So you couldn't get into your car if you had an electronic only system to open your car door. You could not get in your car, and you couldn't start your car if you had a keyless remote. So, but anybody who had an ignition where you'd put the key in and actually turn the key the old-fashioned way, they were good to go, no problems. And so what happened is tow trucks were called. And about 100 or more people had their vehicles towed to the dealerships to find out what in the heck is wrong. So car after car after car after car after car are being towed from this parking lot. And then they get it to the dealership, and then they find out the cars are fine. Absolutely fine. No, not one of them had a problem. And what Rick is talking about is there was electromagnetic radiation that was installed, and we broke the story right here on USA Prepares. The KY3, the big television station, had their engineers thinking about it. They couldn't figure out exactly what it was. We said exactly what it was. It was a transmission. That was the third harmonic out, which is at the middle of the FM band, which is 3 times the frequency of the the keyless remote is 3 times the frequency of the middle of the FM band for radio waves, and it was installed in the parking lot as another antenna, and boom, it wiped out it overpowered the capacity for the keyless remote to open vehicle doors.
So that could be another possibility, not probability, of your LED lights, because the band level to make that bioluminescence, it's a luminescent form of light, has a very small bandwidth between this one piece of material and the other, and a coronal mass might have a harmonic in there that could disrupt that logic center, what they call the forbidden zone. It's when you take gallium and arsenic and bound them together to create a register, what we call their I/O register systems. And that is microwave bound. And the sun, if it's giving off microwave, and it is in certain mass ejections, it might disrupt your lighting, might disrupt a lot of things using electric current. Probably we're going to have something like that, very similar to what happened to the Carrington effect back in 1857, I think, or 1859, when we lost telegraph. And Matt Stein's projections on the possibilities of a serious coronal mass ejection, where it takes out the large capacitor, your storage systems for our grid, that is, it's pretty serious. I would, for example, move away from anything doing with electrical current. Now, that's not a bad thing to have that as a backup. It's a lot better than candles. but I'm not sure. But what that might also become affected when you lose the grid and you lose power, that your battery power won't have a problem, but the LED part might. And I don't know that. I haven't been current enough in the physics to have known on that. And there's no way to shield that, because we're talking about microwave or quantum mechanical levels of wavelengths. So there it is. I don't have a clue yet as to what would happen, but I can say with full certainty that it will affect your daily life across the board. And the concern I had about your concepts of sanitation and hot water, we need to rethink that kind of system, because if the grid does go down, the amount of water you need just for drinking is sizable. And then when you start to add in your toilet and your concepts of hot, soapy water, we need to rethink how we do what we do in those regards. That's my concern.
Rick, you're right on the money as usual, and I'll tell you why I say that. And we've got a caller, Bud. We'll be with you in just a second. Rick, I've got the package right here, and I'm kind of crinkling it. It's the LED strip, and what is it in? It's in a Mylar anti-static bag. It was shipped from China. I got two different shipments.
There you go.
So
there you go, China.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and that's where they're made. We don't make them here, and if we want them, boy, believe me, I don't like shopping there, but there's no choice. But both shipments came from two different factories in China, and they are both in Mylar anti-static bags to protect them so they don't get blown up by a coronal mass ejection on the way over to Vinny's farm. Bud in Montana will be with you on the other side of the break. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Richard A-L-A-N, Miller.com. I just got an email from Garland, one of our class in Missouri, and he wanted to know how come I wasn't at the event at Remington's. It's owned by a Baptist church, Garland. The Baptist church owned. Ridgecrest Baptist Church told me that if I showed up at that event, they would escort me out and ultimately call the police on me. So if you want to know why I wasn't at that CCW information event with Richard Mack, they threatened me. They told me they would call the police on me. So if that's the one thing that would probably get me thrown off the air on KWTO. If I mention that on KWTO, they really don't want me talking about the Baptist church. And how they keep calling the police on me. But anyway, we've got Bud in Montana. Bud in Montana, you've got some information you'd like to share with us about LED lighting?
Sure. Well, Vincent, I just had some ideas on your LED lighting because I've been an electrician for about 35 years, and I live totally off the grid and have for the last 12 years. And I think if you run 30 amps off of 4 batteries at 12 volts, you will drain them fairly fast.
Oh yeah, I won't be doing that. I won't be draining. I won't be using all 30 amps.
Right, I understand that.
And by the way, Bud, please send me an email. Please send me an email, and I'd like to talk to you off the air and maybe have you come on the air with me. But go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is I don't have email because I live off the grid. But I can. I do have your text line, and I can text you my phone number.
There you go.
What I was going to tell you is. If the other thing to remember on those batteries is that if you do not have some kind of a controller that will dump the power at, say, 20% of the maximum amount of amperage that are in the batteries, like if you drain them all the way down, what happens is your battery life is cut in half.
Yeah, that's true. He's right.
Yep.
Yes,
so,
and I do have...
Go ahead.
But I do have a solar power charge controller. Yes.
Okay, good idea, good deal. I just think that I have done things quite a bit differently I decided to go with an inverter, but like Dr. Miller said, in case of a coronal mass ejection, there's a very good chance that it would get fried. So I am in the process now of even getting me another one where I can put it in a Faraday cage, and I've done this with my vehicle, different things that I can do it with. We don't run cattle, but I have a little farm up here. It's just the weather, like you said a long time ago when you decided to move to Missouri, the weather is quite a bit colder up here, so we have greenhouses and stuff in order to be able to grow almost anything. But anyway, I appreciate your program, and I was really bummed that I couldn't get to listen on the GCN telephone line, because that's how I listen to you. It's the only way I can get you. I would really love it if you could get on shortwave somehow, but I'm sure it's quite expensive.
Hey, I've got great news for you. Seriously, Bud, I've got great news for you. I was talking to... I called GCN. We have an instructor from Mexico. And he sent me an email, and he said, hey, I can't call the GCN line to get in. So I said, okay, let me call. And I talked to Alex Jones, producer, and he said, okay, here's the international line. Just call this number. Have him call this number. So we did. And he said, by the way, do you realize that we don't get any complaints about you? And I said, well, that's really neat. So he said, no, we have never gotten a complaint about, USA Prepares or Vincent Finelli. And I said, that's really great. And he was the guy that was instrumental in getting us on from 1 hour to 2 hours. So, and he said, we have gotten some calls. People want you on the satellite. And I said, okay. And he said, yeah, we want to do that. We want to pursue it. So by the next day, we were in communication, and 2 days later, we were on the satellite. No, we were on the satellite the next day. Rick's satellite, Galaxy 19. So he's going to be on with us. So you will be able to listen to us on Galaxy 19 satellite radio. I'm Vin Finelli. Bud, thanks so much. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next Thursday, and we're looking forward to having you over at the farm for the next Get Prepared Expo, July 1920. We'll be right. Above all, honesty and integrity, what happens next is up to you.